religious right hate groups in the United States. So from the very beginning, there was a fundamentalist Christian agenda, with Tipper Gore being I'm mixing up wolf in sheep's clothing. I was going to say something really funny, and I totally forgot what it is, but you get the idea. And they started off their anti-music campaign with a bang. They had United States Senate committee hearings investigating the evils of music, with all the big network media there. And Tipper Gore and Susan Baker were called as the opening expert witnesses on wicked music by the chairman of the committee, Al Gore. And Tipper and Susan read a statement about how we had to crack down on these evil musicians because Ozzy Osbourne was making people kill themselves, and Judas Priest was getting teenagers to worship Satan, and AC/DC caused juvenile crime, obviously. And the Tipper was inspired to start the PMRC because she saw her oldest daughter listening to a Prince song about masturbating with a magazine. Oh, we can't have masturbation in the Gore household, unless, of course, it's Al saying with a straight face he should be president of the United States. But besides the Tipper sticker, they had other things in mind. They wanted a rating system with V for violent, and O for occult, and an anti-gay rating on there, something to red flag any music that had gay content or mentioned homosexuality. For that, I find it ironic that gay activists are some of the people maddest at the Green Party because Gore didn't become president. The only two issues Gore differed from Bush on in any significant way were abortion and gay rights. Otherwise, they were equally toxic. But I digress. Then Tipper and Susan introduced more expert witnesses that they presented as musicologists, who all turned out to be fundamentalist Christian preachers, some of them of the rabid anti-Semitic variety. And the major labels didn't send anybody down to contradict any of the horse shit these people were saying. And so finally Frank Zappa took it upon himself to testify against Tipper Gore. And then Dee Snider of Twisted Sister showed up, and John Denver testified against Tipper Gore. And shortly thereafter was dropped by RCA Records, even though he'd sold 90 million albums for them over the years. And Tipper didn't get her full wish, but as I said, she did a lot of damage, saying, oh, we don't want any legislation. We want this to be all voluntary by the industry. However, from that point until today, different people, including Gore's old Vice President Joseph Lieberman, who's now back in the Senate, have been trying to make it the law of the land that the Tipper sticker is a legal definition of obscenity. And if you sell a Tipper stickered album to a minor, bad things can happen to you. $10,000 fine per day if Lieberman had his way. And so there was that angle, and she was saying, oh, we're not trying to get anybody arrested or anything. But only a few months after those Senate hearings, Susan Baker announced to the media that in her rifle scope was a band called Dead Kennedys, because of the artwork inside the Frankenchrist album by Swiss surrealist master H.R. Giger, which unfortunately hardly anybody has seen that poster in recent years because CDs are too damn small to be able to put it in. Vinyl rules, if you ask me. And so right 2 weeks after being targeted by Susan Baker, the LAPD came up to San Francisco. About 6 of them, 3 San Francisco officers, broke a window by the front door of my house and came in and trashed the place, and then hauled off the evidence that they needed, grimly walking away with Frankenchrist albums and other things. They searched high and low, under the bed, in the cat box. I don't know what the hell they were looking for. Drugs, maybe, a few stray guns. But sorry, that's not me. I just make these songs, these records, that's all. And I was scared shitless. I mean, they were circling around. Somebody get this guy out of here so I don't have to listen to him and all. There was a good cop, bad cop thing going on. I was well aware that the LAPD had treated punk rock fans and many other people like Rodney King an awful lot before somebody finally caught him on tape. A little bit after that, me and 4 other people, but mainly me, they dropped most of the stuff against the other people later, was charged with distributing harmful matter to minors. The first time an album had ever been put up on an obscenity charge in American history. And this was a pretty nerve-wracking experience, not knowing if all kinds of other music would go down, if I was convicted and all the finger pointing would be leveled at me, knowing it had to be fought, knowing that there was money to be raised to pay for lawyers for all these people. Mine did it for no fee, but not everybody, all the other defendants were so lucky. And it did mean that there was a lot of intense media coverage. There are 2 kinds of famous people, stars and targets, and I was target du jour for a little while there. But it was a good opportunity to be able to say to media who normally wouldn't admit I existed, document how Tipper Gore was connected to far right-wing religious groups, including Reverend Jerry Falwell's people and Reverend Pat Robertson and the rest of those lovely individuals. And so finally, it meant that interviewers, instead of asking me over and over, tell us about the new album, or the most boring question in the world, what do you think of the punk rock scene today? Finally, more interesting questions were coming my way, and it was going to be growing, and finally there was the trial, 3 weeks sitting in a courtroom in LA. Funny now, but scary then, as expert witnesses sat on the stand with a long pointer and said, well, I think this part of the Giger artwork relates to this part of the song MTV Get Off the Air, and this part relates to Soup is Good Food. And finally the jury deadlocked 7-5 in favor of acquittal, but that didn't mean I could go, because in America, if you don't get a unanimous jury in a criminal trial, you have to have another trial. But luckily the judge refused the prosecutor's request for a new trial, so I was free, sort of, but the music was not, because all kinds of big and smaller chain stores kicked out everything with Dead Kennedys, Alternative Tentacles Records, or my name on it, out of fear that the local Tipper Gore would get the cops to bust them next. But by that time, I'd raised enough stink, even in the mainstream media, that Tipper Gore was starting to get some uncomfortable questions, and we wound up meeting each other in the ring on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where I'm half awake because I had to get up right at the time I usually go to bed. The sun was barely coming up, but you had to be in the lobby of the hotel to go to the Oprah Show. Jello, Tipper Gore, pleased to meet you. Just gushingly friendly, a common tactic among these people, I've discovered. And then we were all herded into a limo, all the guests, to be taken to Oprah. And the other ones that time were Bob Guccione Jr., the original publisher of Spin, and a psychiatrist whose answer to every question was buy my book, and a token teenage music fan who turned out to be really articulate, luckily, and his mother. But I was sat right across from Tipper Gore, and so we had to make conversation. And she says, well, my eldest is starting to get into the punk rock, like The Clash and Bunny and the Echo Man. And then we get to the dressing room. Before we go on the show, Oprah had her own. Nobody met her before or after the show. And Tipper gave me this book of hers that she was promoting on the show, Raising PG Kids in an X-Rated Society. She even insisted on autographing it for me. To Jello, please read with an open mind. We can all work for a better society. Which is exactly what I was doing by working with the Green Party to get people not to vote for her husband. But anyway, I read the book. I made it 28 pages with my open mind until she had this to say about Dead Kennedys. Their brand of rock music has become a Trojan horse, rolling explicit sex and violence into our homes. I really try. But then, later on, as I say, she was starting to get shit in the media, finally, and she was saying, oh, I'm not a censor, I'm a consumer advocate like Ralph Nader, I'm a feminist, I'm trying to warn people against defective products and male misogynist lyrics and all that. And the people said, well, if you're not trying to legislate, well, what about Jello Biafra's trial? Oh, well, we had nothing to do with that. I respect Jello Biafra. That was in the East Coast and the West Coast papers. One day, what do I get in the mail but the Metro from Nashville, Tennessee, where when asked about my trial, she replies, I'd like to take credit for it. This meant war. You can run, but you can't hide. We're going to smoke you out of their hole. Don't mess with Texas. Little did I guess that I would be invited back to get in the ring with Tipper a second time after she did that on the Oprah show. And I was telling her producer, hey, you really want me on the show again? I mean, Oprah hated me. She wouldn't even let me talk. She has an off-camera hand gesture she uses when the frame's about here, where one person says something she doesn't want on the air, she points there, and that mic goes on instead. I try to say something, Tipper's turn. I mean, you sure you want me back? Oh, yes, we want you back on the show. Oh, okay, well, I'll be ready. And this time it was a little different. They'd remodeled the studio. They had 2 dressing rooms now, one for me and Ice-T and one for everyone else on the show. Which in this case was Tipper Gore and 2 African-American journalists and Rabbi Abraham Cooper from the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which fights anti-Semitism and hate crimes against Jewish people and all. He was on there because Professor Griff of Public Enemy had made some rather unfortunate statements about Jewish people that he has since apologized for. And by then, Tipper had learned that Satan doesn't scare parents afraid of their own teenagers half as much as the prospect of their teenagers listening to music made by black people does. Especially political hip-hop music by people like Public Enemy, Ice-T, Ice Cube, NWA, I think KRS-One, and others were on their blacklist by then, which was almost literally a black list. Almost every artist on it was black by then. Anyway, Oprah rolls a video of Guns N' Roses and Axl Rose spouting crap against immigrants. Then on comes an Ice-T video singling out a song lyric he has about doing a woman with a flashlight. Oprah stops the video and Ice jumps in. God, is he good at taking over talk shows. Yeah, well, some women like to do it with a flashlight. Oprah did not know what to say. And finally I got my chance, and this time I knew I was only going to have one chance, so I just railed off all this stuff that Tipper Gore had done and who she was connected with behind the scenes. And hey, Rabbi Cooper, are you sure you want to get in bed with people who, for example, Tipper Gore in her book endorses the Back in Control Training Center run by ex-LA cops to de-punk and de-metal kids. And one of the things they list as a sign of occult graffiti and devil worship is the Jewish Star of David. And Rabbi Cooper looked a little more interested at that point. And you even tried to get me thrown in the joint. I was put on trial for my music because of you, and you even tried to take credit for it. I did no such thing. I have no connections with right-wing religious extremists. I'm a liberal Democrat. And I ever try to take credit for your trial? Oh, yes, you did. And I pulled the Metro article out of my pocket, read it to Tipper Gore. The audience starts booing and hissing Tipper Gore. I said, what kind of an example are you setting for your own kids as a parent when they see you lying on national television? At that point, Oprah jumps in. Well, I'm sure you've been misquoted too before, haven't you, Jello? And now a word from our sponsor. That was the end of my relationship with Tipper Gore, with Oprah Winfrey, but not with Tipper Gore. I mean, as I say, I've sort of tracked all the later attacks on music and the different tactics they use, Lieberman being the worst right now, and people moan and groan about how you Greens cost us the Supreme Court. Wait till you see what kind of neo-Nazis Bush appoints. Well, with Lieberman there, who said things like the Constitution applies only to a moral and religious people, and that it guarantees freedom of religion but not freedom from religion, I worry what Gore would have put on the Supreme Court, too. I mean, if Lieberman was a Southern Baptist instead of a Jew, he would have been kicked off the Bush caring mom who went to Grateful Dead shows and rollerbladed and took pictures of homeless people and put them out as coffee table books. She did. She is a good photographer. But what they did at the convention just amazed me. I actually got into the Democratic convention on the last day with a, I suppose, borrowed press pass. I didn't really want to ask. And first I actually got down on the floor where the convention was going on. There weren't any speakers on at the time, so the delegates were just standing there, boogieing ever so slightly in their chairs to music so horrible I wished it was still Fleetwood Mac that the Democrats used at their conventions. They were some of the most scary, squarish people I've ever seen. I was like, ooh, God. This is the Truman Show! I'm stuck in the Truman Show! Help! So I go into the upper deck, and imagine my nausea and horror when all those zombified delegates suddenly erupt in fervor like they're at the Nuremberg rally or something, all waving these signs saying, Tipper rocks! Tipper rocks! Tipper rocks! This is the contempt the Democratic Party has for the memory and intelligence of the American people. I mean, they wonder why Gore didn't get any youth votes like Clinton did. Well, perhaps this is your answer. And one more example of why Gore cost Gore the election. And as he, well, I think I need a drink. After that, I need a drink. Even if it is, well, it's some of the bubbly. What do you know? Anyway, so as you might guess, I walked away from the Democratic Party many years ago, and had only recently registered myself as being of another party. I thought it was at least worth rolling the dice with the concept of an American Green Party based on what they were originally doing in Germany, and the idea that this might be a party that's from more than one country that might work together or at least share ideals and stand, whose platform and views were far closer to my own than the phony liberal Democrats or the, well, at this point, the Democrats and the Republicans are like this. Republicans stand for greed, corruption, and bigotry. And the Democrats stand for pretending to feel guilty about greed, corruption, and bigotry. And that is the only, I mean, they're both just controlled by the same corporations. Not just the last presidential election was stolen, they've all been stolen in my lifetime by corporations buying off the candidates. So no matter who wins, we lose. So I registered Green several years ago, got some ideas from their mailings over the years, but in no way was I prepared for a phone call in January of 2000. Hi, this is, we're from the New York State Green Party, and we just had our convention, and we nominated you for president. Want to run? Well, I'm flattered that you'd ask. You are registered Green, aren't you? Oh, good thing you asked. Lucky for you I am. But I haven't run for president on my calendar this year, and I don't have any real quarrels with Ralph Nader. I voted for him in '96 in good conscience. And as many of you probably know, well, I wouldn't have much time to campaign, because as many of you probably know, the former members of my old band, Dead Kennedys, have been suing the shit out of me for the past 3 going on 4 years in a dispute that started because I wouldn't let them put Holiday in Cambodia in a Levi's TV commercial. And I couldn't believe they would ever want to do anything like that. It seemed like such a no-brainer to me. I mean, when Search and Destroy by the Stooges came on in a Nike shoe commercial, I got physically sick. But there was an obvious lesson there. Don't let it happen to you, as if I thought it ever would. I mean, not just for political reasons, but the sheer nausea of having what might be the best song we ever did put in a fucking stupid-ass TV commercial, which if it was successful, people would hate the song forever because it reminded them of the commercial. I mean, I don't know whether they have the Like a Rock ads for Chevrolet trucks here, that they're those giant monster trucks that they do in America, that Bob Seger song, Like a Rock. Now, when Seger plays to his 20,000 nostalgic fans, when he plays that song, he's gotten booed now. People are so sick of it being in all these car commercials year after year after year after year. Anyway, well, they begged to differ, so they went and got a downtown corporate lawyers representing Journey, Boston, Doobie Brothers, Carlos Santana, one of the women trying to swipe Jerry Garcia's estate money. We're talking real grassroots punk consciousness here with these people. And they dragged me through a whole trial that's ripped the shit out of my insides much more than the Frankenchrist one ever did. And to see Ray, Klaus, and DH go up on the witness stand one by one and lie, claiming they wrote the music to all the songs, that I only wrote a few lyrics, that was all I ever had to do with the band, and that I plotted to hide all this money from them. And yes, there was a long-term accounting error, but when we, not they, found it, we paid them, and then they sued. And what else did they do? They brought in, they also said that all the money that any music label is going to spend to try and put out other stuff they like or pay people to work at the label so it works right, that all should have gone into their pockets. All the money that went into No Means No and Alice Donut and Ayahuasca from up in Essex that we're working with now, and the Amoebics and the others, it all should have been theirs. Therefore, I ripped them off. And they brought in an expert witness from Grateful Dead Records who testified that I owed them $500,000 in damages for lack of promotion because the axiom existed that if you put more advertising into something, automatically more of the product will sell. And they wanted damages for lack of promotion because they were not regularly on MTV and in Billboard and Rolling Stone 15 years after the band broke up. And to their own visible shock, the jury believed them. And so now the court has awarded them ownership over all the Dead Kennedy stuff except Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. And they own my music, my lyrics, the artwork I did, Winston Smith's art. They own my face, they own my name, and can do any poisonous, money-grubbing thing they want to, including the fake reunion show they played 2 nights ago in LA with a former TV child star apparently aping my moves and my voice to an audience of Los Angeles-level IQ punk rock fans. So be afraid, be very afraid. They've reissued the CDs in idiot form, if you ask me, especially if you see what they did to the artwork on the inside of Frankenchrist. And they reshot all the artwork so they could give themselves credit for writing the songs, then billed me the entire cost of reshooting the artwork. And the ones they're in cahoots with in England is a distributor called Plastic Head. So if you see any Dead Kennedy stuff on Plastic Head or their fake custom label DK Music, where they even stole the Dead Kennedys DK logo for their own logo, just remember you are under no obligation to give those fucks your money. This is not being sold in the true spirit of the band. There's a live album they've done now, too, called Mutiny on the Bay, that's so bad I asked them to pull my name off of it. Alternative Tentacles had rejected it years ago because it was so bad. The sound quality is better than the bootlegs, but the performances are so bad, Ray blows his guitar parts on Police Truck 6 times, and that's just the first song. So, it might not just be me who's getting ripped off, you might be getting ripped off too. So, to avoid a lifetime of torture and winding up having to disown something that means more to me than it ever did to them, I am appealing that court verdict to a higher court, in spite of being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt from this shit already. And so we've started a fund for it again, the Alternative Tentacles Legal Defense Fund, which you can find at our website, alternativetentacles.com, if you are interested. So, to make a long story short, New York Green Party, this is why I'm not going to have time for a full-on campaign for President of the United States. But I finally decided to leave my name on the ballot in the state of New York and see if it popped up on any other ones, just so that people who had completely given up on the voting booth insurrection, that's an essential part of the spirit of Seattle in the street. You can cause all the shit in the street that you want, but it helps to have insurrection in the voting booth too, or you don't move very far forward. Anyway, I let them keep my name on there in hopes it would draw other people in who knew what I was saying and what I was about, but had never heard of Ralph Nader or the Green Party. And to a degree it worked, because they brought me to the national convention, and the guy got a little more respect from the older rank-and-file Greens. What is this rock guy doing in our nice tree-hugging political party and all? Somebody's got to make that party rock, though, and add sick humor here and there and everything. Although Nader vetoed the stickers people wanted to make Bush and Gore make me want a Ralph. Well, I guess that means in England that's slang for throwing up as well. He didn't see the humor in that, but so it goes. Anyway, I got to talk at the convention and everything, and a lot of what I said there, some of it got on CNN, it went out on C-SPAN, which was another national cable channel, the whole thing did. This came from a piece about 2 spoken word albums ago that I originally did for National Public Radio when their Marketplace program, of all things, asked me, as well as a former mayor of New York City, Ed Koch, and some high-powered Ivy League professors to record for them a message to the next President of the United States. And so far, my ideas have not been adopted, and not even by the Green platform in some cases, so what the hell, I'll repeat them here too. To the President of the United States and all 2,000 election winners, wake up, get real. 2010 will be like Russia is now. Call off the drug war. It's worse than the drugs. Gangs and crime won't end until prohibition ends. Decriminalize all drugs, including heroin and crack. Put users on prescriptions so they don't have to rob and kill people to pay the mob's high drug prices. Use money saved from excess law enforcement to treat people who want to quit. Rehab costs 2/3 less than prison. In Europe, they call this harm reduction, and it's already been proven to work in Holland and parts of Switzerland and a couple places in England. And what do you know? Crime rates lower, HIV rates lower, and even the drug use rate is lower than the United States of America. And where's the drive-bys? Where's the gangs? Harm reduction will take a far bigger bite out of crime than redneck vigilante bullshit like 3 strikes, you're out. Do you know what 3 strikes, you're out is, by the way? You know, life sentence for a tiny little crime if you've got a couple felonies against you. So in California, people are now in jail for life for sitting in a stolen truck, stealing a slice of pizza, stealing a can of soda, stealing their cousin's TV set. I mean, one of the old drummer from MDC has been on the run for years because apparently he may go down on 3 strikes because of a couple of burglary convictions before that'll, you know, constitute felonies and strikes against him. So, you know, maybe that's not what some people had in mind, but they voted it in. We can vote laws in directly through ballot initiatives in America. And people were persuaded to vote this one in by a huge margin by all these TV ads. Crime, crime, everywhere, more crime. That little girl wouldn't have been killed if that guy hadn't been out on parole for some other crime. We gotta lock him up for life and protect our children. People fell for it. That's what they thought the law was about. But then instead of putting people in jail for stealing a jar of vitamins, which the Supreme Court ruled was not cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah. And guess who paid for the ads? Well, we've done it again with privatization. Private prison companies paid for the ads, along with the Prison Guards Union, who's the most powerful one in California now. Private prisons. Do you have those here yet? Oh, well, a couple is way too many. Because how do you make money running a jail? You take the money allocated to run the jail and spend, as little as possible and pocket the rest. So people put in private prisons, no more library, in some cases no more weight room even, no psychological counseling, no career counseling, so you might have a place to go when you get out again. After all, we want you to come back. And it's the private prison companies who hire the lobbyists to pressure state governments and Congress to pass ever longer drug sentences and more 3 strikes you're out laws so they can make more money. It's not because there's a big crime epidemic, it's actually been going down for years. No, it's a scam. The drug war is a scam on behalf of private prison companies, and 3 strikes you're out is, you name it, it's all scam. Plus, it gives us a new pool of prison labor to compete with the Chinese. There's a lot of prison industry now, and Victoria's Secret stuff, some of it gets made in prisons now, and No Fear stuff gets made in prisons. Some Starbucks accessories do. Microsoft uses prison labor. And then some of the states, like Oregon, charge the prisoners back $6,000 a year rent for their cells, plus $1.50 a meal. The state of Virginia, after they lock you up, bills you retroactively the cost of your trial, criminal processing fee, arrest processing fee, jail processing fee, just enough so they can seize all your property, so when you get out you're left with nothing. Anyway, yet here we are still pushing the drug war and boot camps, labor camps, concentration camps. In America, marijuana is less harmful than beer or cigarettes. And as many of you know, marijuana hemp plant can be made into medicine, paper, clothing, even fuel for cars. Think of what that will do to rescue family farms, and you won't even have to inhale. And Tipper Gore. If you're really so concerned about victims of the violence that may or may not be media-inspired, why don't you volunteer your time at a battered women's shelter instead of running around the country trying to batter innocent poets, artists, and musicians? Homeless problem? Give them a home! Even Bush can understand that if you really work with the guy for a while. Legalize squatting in empty buildings. Balance the budget, tax religion. We have a minimum wage. How about a maximum wage? 6 figures and it's payback time. You want to get the welfare moms a living wage and build those high-speed trains, use Michael Jordan's money, or Bill Gates's money, or Tiger Woods, or Julia Roberts, and they wouldn't even feel it. And no free trade with any country that treats its workers and environment as badly as Mexico does, or Indonesia, or China either. Cut the military budget to zero. Our biggest national security threat ain't Osama bin Werewolf, it's the arms race America still has with itself. But if there must be a military, why not retrain them to rebuild neighborhoods, feed hungry people, clean up toxic waste, much of it their own, and let's use our gazillion-dollar militarized space program to do something useful and send the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, NATO, and the Pentagon to Mars. And leave them there. And to really take a bite out of crime, and the reason I say bite out of crime, perhaps you do not have McGruff the Crime Dog cartoon ads in this country, instructing kids on how to turn in their peers for drugs. Put all these burglary devices on your home and you'll take a bite out of crime.